This video we're going to be going over what are the top 5 budget left backs that will be inside FIFA 23. We're a couple of days out from release. We do have access currently to the FIFA web app, so we can get some prices of these players as well now. So different to our centre back video where we struggled to actually guess prices, we can actually go over rough ideas of prices for some of these players. So let's get straight into this. I don't want to waste too much time. If you do enjoy this style of content, don't forget to subscribe. But first of all, we're going to go over the fact that how the hell has João Cancelo got more pace than Andy Robertson now? I am a Liverpool fan and I am Scottish, so I'm probably going to be slightly biased towards this, but let's be honest, Andy Robertson in terms of pace, every other stat we could probably debate, let's be honest, but when it comes to pace, Andy Robertson is absolutely clear of João Cancelo, and it's without a doubt. If anyone watches football, they should know this as well. So this makes no sense. I don't know how FIFA come up with these stats, but anyway, we're moving on. So when it comes to these left backs right here, we already know the top few are definitely going to be very expensive. Now, João Cancelo, price-wise, 38,000 coins, very, very expensive player. Robertson's more than that, actually, I think. Let's have a quick check. So Robertson, I do think, is a little bit more than that as well. Yep, 85k coins, pretty ridiculous if you ask me. So a lot of these players will be very expensive. I've checked the price of Rio Hernandez, very expensive as well. Alphonso Davies, Mendy, very expensive. So we are looking for players that are under about 5k coins, preferably a lot cheaper than that as well. We want these to be starter players that you can use. So obviously the top few are going to be out the picture. Now, on top of that, we're looking for players that have over 80 pace, because anything below 80 pace is going to be kind of a bit slow, especially for a fullback anyway. We're mainly talking about left backs here. And then obviously defensive capabilities need to be in there as well. Now, so players that I was looking at after obviously the kind of main ones is Spinazzola is going to be pretty solid. I do think it's going to be defensively not great because, as you can see here, his physical is 69. So he does probably work well if you just want an Italian squad, but defensive capabilities are important, and then we're also looking at high work rate as well when it comes to defensive ability. So when it comes to Chilwell, his work rate is medium, and if you are going to choose to buy Chilwell, you might as well choose to buy Cucurella, who on the other hand actually has multiple different positions, but again, in terms of pace, he isn't great, so we're not really choosing Cucurella either for our top 5. Tagliafico actually could be a solid choice, in my opinion. I just think being from Argentina doesn't really help build a good squad. They don't really have a lot of really good players, especially building an international squad, unless you really just want to play Messi in your squad. But to be fair, he does have a good link with Messi because he is in the Ligue 1, so that does help. And his defensive work rate is high, so definitely a solid card. It's just not one that I'd put in my top 5 personally. So 1,400 coins, pretty respectable to be fair, so definitely a solid card in my opinion, just not in my top 5. Then we're moving on to Tierney, who in my opinion is going to be a solid card, even going into the new FIFA. Now, my top 5, I'll show you the prices in just a minute, but I do think Tierney is a solid card. Premier League, definitely fits in a squad. His ability when it comes to work rate is high, and his defensive capabilities are pretty solid too. His pace is actually a lot better than Andy Robertson's, unfortunately, but it is what it is. And Arsenal are obviously a popular team, so I mean, it does just make sense. So Tierney makes my top 5 list. Martinez is probably better as a centre back. His pace is a bit too slow. Gvardiol is actually a solid choice as well in my opinion. Bundesliga player, can play centre back or left back. Work rate's pretty solid, pace is good, defensive capabilities are really good, so he makes my top 5 as well, especially if you're trying to build a Bundesliga squad, which is actually probably going to be pretty popular, to be fair, considering a lot of the players that they have at the moment. So that is definitely a solid card in my opinion. And then price-wise is pretty good as well, which I'll show you in just a moment. Teles, probably not so good. Brazilian player though, so that could work out pretty well. Nuno Mendes is probably going to be either relatively expensive, but his work rate isn't the best either, so even if he's not that expensive. Yeah, let's check the quick price on Nuno Mendes here. 4k coins. Now that, to be fair, is not that expensive, but relatively expensive for a player that is only 80 rated. But his work rate isn't the best, so I wouldn't really recommend him all that much anyway. Although he does have good links, obviously because he's a PSG player. So I mean, if you are looking to build the PSG squad, which probably a lot of people are, then he could be a solid choice. Then we've got Reguilon again, and then we're moving on to kind of like the third page of this. We've got Malassia here, who actually does have pretty solid stats. The only issue is, again, his work rate lets him down here, so he probably would be a relatively cheap player. So if you're not too worried about the work rate, then you could get Malassia, but personally I would choose defensive players that have the high work rate. It definitely works out in your favor. Kyle Walker-Peters is one of the only players that can play left back and right back, so definitely a solid choice. The only issue is his pace is not too great and his work rate isn't the best. So let's get into my top 5 list, and we'll also go over the prices as well. So this is my top 5 list right here. So as you can see, Tierney, as we discussed before, definitely makes the list. Now we'll quickly go over his price as well. 3k coins for a Premier League player. That will have really good links in the Premier League overall. His work rate is high defensively and attacking. Not only that, his pace is pretty solid in terms of fullback. So overall, this is going to be a very solid card. It was very good in FIFA 22 as well. So these prices were taken off of basically the web app. So it could come down a bit. Once again, I do think as a solid card, Bundesliga player, overall pace is good, high work rate defensively as well. 4k coins for this kind of player. So again, one of the more expensive ones on my list, but definitely by no means an expensive card. So definitely a solid player overall. I don't see his price changing too much either. Moving back over, we've got Roussillon. Now the reason why I've put Roussillon on the list is because he's a French player. He's got absolutely ridiculous pace, which is 86. Is not as fast as some of the other players like Mendy, for example, but he's not going to be nowhere near the price of Mendy, so I mean that definitely helps. His defensive capabilities are not great, and he's got medium work rate, but his price, 650 coins, absolutely ridiculous. So if he stays around about that price, definitely a solid choice for a kind of starter French squad. Then we've got Justin, who I do want to point out is one of the only few players that can play left back, right back, similar to Kyle Walker-Peters and João Cancelo, so he'll make a really good substitute. Not only that, he's got high defensive work rate, so that's definitely going to help out a ton. Now, his defensive capabilities are not the best, but in terms of pace, he's pretty solid there too. So overall, definitely a cheap player as well. So 400 coins, ridiculously cheap. And the fact that he can play both left back and right back will help out an absolute ton. Pace split's pretty solid. Defensively, pretty good as well. Work rate is attacking high and defensive high. So overall, good links because he's an English player and he plays in the Premier League. So just a solid card, even though he's 76 rated. And a card that probably will be my fullback. Maybe I'll choose Tierney, depends. But we've got Tsimikas. Now, Tsimikas is not only a Liverpool player, so that just makes him way higher in ratings for me anyway. But not only that, he does have good defensive capabilities. Now, he's not the best on this list, but it's definitely solid enough. His pace is 80 rated, which is very similar to Andy Robertson, which is not the best, but it's still a solid pace. But he's definitely got that work rate there as well. Not only that, he's a super cheap card, so 350 coins, 400 coins, round about that price. So very, very cheap player as well. So overall, definitely my top 5 in terms of fullbacks, in terms of left back. So there we have it. Those are my top 5 left backs in FIFA 23 that will be budget players. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe, and thank you very much for watching.